Welcome back to Chino Wadachi, the most traumatic manga I've ever read. And today I have a guest.
How's it going, guys? This is Fleur.
Yeah, so I found Fleur on YouTube. He made a video on the same manga and I really liked it. So I asked him to join me in my part 2.
And then by the end of that chapter, I believe chapter 86, it starts to snow. And Seichi points it out to Fukushi that it's begun to snow. And that leads us to chapter 87, right?
Yes.
At Seichi, he wakes up in the middle of the night. It's like, I believe, 3 or 4 in the morning. And he goes outside, kind of takes it all in. And then, surprisingly, Shigeru comes out of nowhere, crawling on a busted leg. And he's like,
Yep, he
I don't
walked
think
all
he
the
says
way.
anything.
See, I thought it was going to be a dream sequence.
Same.
Not only
same.
because Shigeru did the impossible and walked all the way there in the snow with a broken leg in the middle of the night,
Yep.
but he's like, "Oh, let's go to that cliff," and then they go, and then like Seichi basically gets possessed by a weird mom demon and pushes him, which I have to agree with you. I think it peaked before this because when I was reading this, I didn't feel anything. Like
Yeah, I agree.
I felt like we were getting too convoluted with the psychology part, and it was kind of upsetting.
No, but I completely agree. Yeah, it was. I feel like chapter 88, I believe it was pretty much peak up until the last few pages. That like Seiko's, Seiko demon mom. It's like, wow, you think I'm the bad person? Nah, look at yourself.
Yeah.
And
Now,
then it gets super convoluted, and it's like, oh my god.
yeah, and I liked like pretty much how it started and how it got to where it is was all like it was telling us everything non-chronologically. Like we were seeing it as it is, but out of order so that we had to put the pieces together. And
Exactly.
now it's like, and I kind of liked where it was gonna go. Like, oh, actually, Seiichi told her to push him. He just didn't remember it because he was coping. Like, that does happen in psychology, especially to children. But like, and the illustrations were really cool. I feel like that should have just been a dream where he kills Shigeru for real and then wakes up and it wasn't real. But then
Yeah,
that
so
changed the
for
course
me-
of the rest of the story.
Yeah, but okay, so we can kind of like diverge a little bit to like kind of like our thoughts like right there. Because personally for me, I thought that it was like the climax of a character arc in regards to Seichi. That Seichi, he's thinking all this stuff in his head because gotta keep in mind Shigeru is literally quoting Seiko from like a moment of time you'd be unaware of because he was still comatose. He's quoting Seiko, and then like. So personally for me, I would have just preferred that Shigeru wasn't there at all, right?
Yeah.
Shigeru wasn't there. That Seichi's having this kind of not I wouldn't say like a meltdown, but like kind of just like letting out all his trauma, you know. And then let's say like by the end, he just wakes up, and it's like, oh, like it's kind of like I would think that he'd be like born again, that he would have let go or not let go. You can never forget about your trauma, but like move past it and to live his life with Fukushi. I would have much liked that it ended like that. There was like a little bit of a time skip, i.e. Akanohana, and like let's say like Seichi and Fukushi, they're like college students or young adults, and they're living their lives together. I would have much rather the manga had ended there, Like for me personally.
I am a bigger fan of tragic stories. And I'm not saying this isn't tragic, but the way it's going is not what I expected. I didn't think we were going to get adult Seiichi who went to jail for killing Shigeru. What I thought was going to happen, and I don't know if this is a perfect ending in my head or not, but this is what I was expecting, was now that she is put away, he was, yes, going to go to Fukishi and like be with her. And then even though like he was on the cusp of happiness with her, his mom ends up appearing and like murdering him.
Ah.
Because then it's like, it's one of those tragic stories where he almost got out of it. He almost had what he wanted. And the threat to his existence from the very beginning was the one that got him.
That not gonna lie, man. That's pretty good, man.
So Basically, I'm writing my own version of the same. I'm kidding. No, I would. Now, it's not impossible for it to still go in that direction, but they haven't reintroduced her into the story yet. And I'm like, is there even a chance she waited and waited and waited like 16, 20, however many years it's been for him? Because if that's the case, then I feel bad for her, like more than I feel bad for him. No one should have to wait through like the best years of their life, quote unquote, for that person. Like I don't know, it would be admirable if she did, but it would also be like, you could have been happy.
No, I agree. And Fukushi, I mean, I don't know. Like, have you ever read like Goodnight Pun Pun?
I haven't read many manga at all, to be honest.
Okay,
You know you know what was the first manga I actually read?
Go ahead.
Attack on Titan, because
Oh,
I could not
yeah.
wait. I could not wait for the anime season 4 part 2. So I read all the way to the second to last chapter, and then I read the final chapter right when it came out.
Ah.
And that's the only manga
Okay.
I have read to this day. Other than Shino no Wadachi, like, and yes, I want to get more into manga, but like, I've always been a troubled reader. But like, this was one of those ones where I was hooked. Like, the illustrations kept me going, the writing kept me going. I just kept like flipping from chapter to chapter to chapter. I read the first 60 in the first night, and I read the other 40, 50 the day after, while I was at work on my phone in between customers.
Oh, okay, that's pretty cool, man. Dang.
I
Oh,
was
yeah,
I was hyper fixated on this story, just to find out that it's not even over yet, and now I have to wait for more.
Oh, yeah. I mean, think about like in my perspective, because for me, I haven't read. I'm not even caught up. So
Oh, I just spoiled something
I made
for you.
I made a kind of like discussion video, right?
Yeah.
Kind of thinking of like, oh, like where I think the story's gonna go. And then since then, I have not read the manga because I've been focusing on like a bunch of like bigger projects. It's taking me some time.
Yeah.
But as soon as I get like maybe like one video out, I'll get back to reacting to
So,
WADACHI. But
have you
yeah.
seen anything after Seiichi gets arrested? Well, not arrested, but after the court
I
part.
have not seen anything after the trial ended.
Okay. Oh, okay. But you know about the time skip, right?
Now I do.
Okay. Because, like, I only had one conversation with someone who hadn't even read the story, and they knew that there was a time skip. So, yeah, he's guilty, and, like, it cuts to when he's out of jail. So,
Oh my
the next
God,
time
really?
the next time you pick it up, he's, like, 30 years old.
What?
Yeah, it was crazy, and he had, like, a smartphone, and it was, like, 2017. I was like, what?
Oh my God.
So, I'm
Oh,
guessing your discussion
like
about what
30
happens...
something now?
He was in jail for like at least like 15 years, I think. So
Man, okay.
yeah,
That's kind of disappointing, but like, I mean, man,
I
okay.
was intrigued. I was confused, but so that's what I was saying though. I don't think Fukishi should wait for him at this point because he had been put away for a decade and a half.
Oh, okay, yeah, of course. At that point, like, we can find another guy. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. No, if he was in jail for like 6 months, yeah, wait for him. But like, no.
15 years? Nah, forget about him.
But yeah, so
I'm like
think
in middle school, so
yeah,
it's like
definitely take the time to catch up because it is going in an interesting direction. It's just not what I imagined at all. So what I was saying about my hypothetical ending is still possible. He just wouldn't be a child anymore. And since the part where you left off, Fukishi has still not returned.
Oh, really?
So what are you, 14 chapters behind? Or like 10 chapters?
Something like that, yeah, I believe
Yeah.
so, yeah.
Yeah, no, she is nowhere to be found at the moment.
That is extremely... Because I feel like... Because, I mean, I don't use Reddit often, right? But when I do, I try to see, like, the kind of, like, discourse that's going around Team Wadachi. And nobody's really talking about Fukushi. I think Fukushi is right up there. I think she's just as great as a character as Seiichi.
I think so too. And I think that if she isn't reintroduced at all, it would just be... I'd probably drop the series.
Because you gotta keep in mind, so like, for me personally, like, after the whole debacle on the mountain, I used to think that Shin Wadachi was gonna be like, not like my favorite Kuzo Shimi manga, because that would be Akanohana, but it would be my second. Then after the whole debacle thing, it's probably like my third. Like, top three, Akanohana, 15 Minute Cafe, and then Tomodachi.
Yeah, I need to read both of those. Is
Oh, I
the
mean,
first one you
I would
mentioned?
personally recommend Akanohana. Akanohana has,
Well, here's the
it's really
thing.
great.
Since I'm inexperienced with manga, I shouldn't read your favorite one like right away. I want to
Okay.
develop taste for what's good, what's bad, and not just start with what's your best.
Okay, no, I got you.
Because that's like
Okay.
if an anime only viewer was like, "Oh, my first anime will be Attack on Titan," and then you jump to another
Okay.
shonen anime and you're like, "None of these have the emotional weight or the lore or anything that this one that I started with has." Like,
That's a great point. Okay.
so I want to get a feel for like just I don't know, a bunch of stuff, but I definitely want to save what you consider the best one for later.
Okay,
But
so
back on
I'll
track.
definitely drop you some recommendations a little after the call.
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure.
sounds great. Yeah, you know what I like, the psychological horror stuff.
Yeah.
I saw a video pop up on my feed about like the three like scariest manga that you've never heard of, and Chino Wadachi was one of them. But yeah,
Okay, for sure. I believe that's from Sufferance, right?
yes, it is. Is
Yeah.
Akanohana one of those?
Uh, I believe he doesn't talk about Akanohana in that video. I know he does Chiwadachi.
You did have questions written down. Did you want to go over those?
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up. Now, the follow up is doesn't apply, but I was gonna ask these questions as follows, and then you can take as long as you need, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so my first question is, where you are currently at in Chiwadachi, what is your reception like? Is it good? Is it bad?
I think it's really good, but flawed. We've already discussed why it's flawed, but I think that it might surprise me. I don't want to tell you specifics because you're not caught up now, but
I appreciate you.
the stuff revolving around his father as once he's an adult is like an iceberg, and we're only at the tip of it right now. You'll know what I mean when you catch up, and I want you to tell me immediately once you do. I won't say just because it's going in a different direction than I expect that it's bad, and we
Okay.
definitely, it's definitely like it lost the momentum a little bit after it
I
peaked,
agree.
which
Yeah.
all roller coasters tend to do so.
Of course. Of course.
So I'm hopeful for it. I think it'll surprise me.
Okay, so optimistic.
Yeah, which is
Okay.
rare for
Okay.
me.
Oh, rare. Oh, okay. Okay. And the second question, right,
Hmm.
is what is Tsushimi trying to say within the story, aka the point of it all?
I think the main central theme is the impact of generational trauma, because you could easily view this as just abusive parenting, which yes it is, but what got us here? What happened to Seiko to make her the way she is to Seiichi? What was Seiko's family like to her? What was that like, and so forth and so on. It's 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 a thought experiment to me. It's like, yeah, this is the result of something terrible, but I want to understand why.
Oh, I think I agree because during the trial, she kind of goes off on like a schizo rant about like how she was raising Seichi and wanted to love him the way that she was never loved. So that would imply that yeah, she had a pretty rough childhood as well, which kind of goes in line with what you're saying about generational trauma. It's kind of like how, for example, I don't want to get like a little. Well, I don't want to like say the word, but like how like
Let's just say maps.
yeah, let's say maps. Okay, maps. Generally, right?
Yeah.
They get abused when they're younger, and then it's a vicious cycle.
Yeah. There's clearly a weird sexual connection between Seiichi and his mother, which,
True.
and if it was done like in a distasteful way like a lot of anime does, I would drop the series, but I feel like this one is really going into like Freudian psychoanalysis. It's not just like a coming of age story. It's like a psychology book unfolding into like the real world, and I'm intrigued by it, even if it's really weird. And I feel like what I would say is more distasteful in psychoanalysis is Evangelion. That anime has created a huge fan base of maps because they're all fighting over which of the 14-year-old girls is the hottest in their skin-tight suits.
Yeah, that's a good point. That is a good point.
And yeah, like, the creator makes a lot of fair points about human development and stuff, but it's done kind of distastefully. Where this manga is written in a way where it's like just raw and realistic.
I would agree. That is very raw. Like, for example, like, and an example, and I agree that, like, it's more like an exploration, right?
Yeah.
Because, like, for example, do you remember when, I believe it was in chapter 11, that Fukushiki comes to Seiichi's house, and she has a letter for him, right?
Yeah.
And Fukushi leaves. Seiko, she, sees the letter and it's like, hey, why don't we just rip it up? And then as she's ripping it up, it shows pieces of him also being ripped up, which is kind of symbolic of, like, her tearing away at himself, his own identity, that, like, he's just kind of forced into whatever she wants to do and not, make decisions for himself,
Yeah. And then following that immediately, they lay in bed together, like, almost like they're about to kiss. And it's bizarre. And it's supposed to feel bizarre because no one should feel like that's normal. But, like, it's the stuff like that kind of, like, pulls some strings, and, like, it's just weird. Like, after the whole incident at Fukishi's house, when he goes home and tries to hide his, like, clothes in the washing machine, and Seiko brings it to his room and shows it to him and starts asking him questions. Like, even though I'm sure most people don't have to experience something so embarrassing in their lives, you can feel that secondhand. Like,
I agree.
That is absolutely, like, that is scarier than her strangling him to death. Like, well, not that she actually did, but, like, she could have. The thought of being in that position, even though I'm, like, 10 years too old to be in that position now, like... It's just like, ugh. I think that it really explores the idea of kind of that metamorphosis of growing up, especially with psychological trauma that you don't understand.
So then this kind of goes into the third question, which is, when you had initially started Wadachi, what pulled you in?
I'll be honest, I had known about the Shigeru falling off the cliff before I had got into it, and
I assume you watched the iPad video, right?
The one video with 4 million views that's about this manga. I can't find a single video about this manga with more views than, like, 10,000, except that one. But yes. And I was like, I need to read this, which is weird because I saw that video like 2 years ago or whenever it came out, and I didn't actually pick it up and read it until 2 months ago or 3 months, whenever I made that video. And I was like, oh, I thought the part in that video was like chapter 1. Like, this takes a long time to happen. It happened, 8 chapters in?
Yeah, it's a slow burn.
It is a slow burn, and I'm glad it is, because we get that glance into his life before everything went wrong, even though it actually went wrong before that. And it's like, everything seemed normal because they were just so, she asks him what he wants for breakfast every morning, she's always around him, and everything seems normal. And then it slowly beads in that she is overbearing and she will not leave him alone and she doesn't let him make decisions, and Shigeru's always coming over because she invites him over, because I get the sense that she's afraid of him making friends because they might not be safe, because mothers can be like that, even though Shigeru is one of those dangerous friends who gets him close to a cliff for fun and laughs at her for being overprotective. I liked the idea that what we saw in that chapter from Seiichi's perspective isn't actually what happened. Now it's like, what if he did tell the police that he saw her push them, and then it turned out that was not what happened? Like,
so do you believe that? What do you think, Seiichi did it then?
I
think
don't.
It was like opposite around, like reverse.
I think she did push him, but I think that, because do you know the whole concept of the looking glass self?
I am familiar with it just by name.
Okay, briefly explaining it, you see other people and you think that they think of you the way that you think of you from their perspective. So I think that she did push him, but she felt like it's what Seiichi wanted her to do. And they illustrate that by him literally telling her to in a different chapter way after, which I don't think that's what happened. I don't think he straight up told her to do anything.
Yeah.
Especially because we're like at the peak of his like psychosis. Like, why would I think that that's the reliable narration? But I think that what it's trying to say is deep down he kind of wanted Shigeru out of the picture, and
of course,
and he couldn't cope with it because she knew that that's what he wanted. But now that it has happened, he's in shock and he's like trying to wipe his own memory. He has dissociated himself with the idea that he wanted Shigeru gone.
Oh, that's a great point because I believe also that Seiichi wanted it to happen, but he's trying to distance himself from that moment because he doesn't want to admit to himself that he was happy about it, or he was like relieved because as we see, like he kind of bullies him. He fucking play video games. He like punched him in the arm. He's talking all that mess about
his mother. Mom. Which probably was the defining one for him. The fact that he insulted his mother. And that's the whole thing that gets him stuck this whole series. It's like, I will do anything to keep her approval of me. And it's like, he could have told the officer right after. Like, but yeah, my mom just pushed him. Like, please arrest her now. But what he was thinking was, I'm going to lose my mother if I say something. And then it became, she basically was taking advantage of that for the remainder of the series because she had him in a chokehold. He can't handle losing me, and I could handle losing him, but I also can't because even though I want to kill him sometimes, I will be a miserable wreck the moment he's gone. And I think that she just can't decide whether or not she wants him. Because,
I agree, yeah.
And I think it's that she doesn't actually want to be a mother. She just wants to be loved the way she never was. So when she realizes, like, I can't be responsible for this child, I just want someone to be there.
Which goes back to the whole generational abuse,
Yeah. So
it makes sense, man. It makes sense.
And it's like that whole argument about people who do evil things. It's like they aren't necessarily a bad person by choice. They have been robbed of that self-control. But it doesn't excuse what they do either. So it's just a bad situation. A bad situation that the only thing we can do about it is prevent it going forward.
I agree. You're hitting like the nail right on the head, man. I agree entirely.
Yeah, so I guess that's where I'm like obsessed with it because I feel like the author has really, really, really read up on like their psychology. Like I don't have a degree in psychology or anything. I have a morbid interest in it.
Of course.
And like I took classes for it, but I also like, I've watched every Crash Course Psychology video. I've watched a whole lot of stuff on YouTube, and people tend to think YouTube's not a great source of information, but like I think I learned more from it than I did in school.
Oh, of course, yeah. I would say I learned a lot of things better outside of school than in it.
Yeah, but yeah, so I think that this show's understanding of psychology, paired with its illustrations, paired with its characters, is brilliant. But I do have a few expectations that I can't let go of, and that's, you couldn't have put Fukishi in the story just for her to disappear where she did and not ever come back.
I agree. So then, just kind of like set it, right?
Yeah.
So for WADACHI, what chapter do you think got you invested, or was it just from the jump?
I think I won't be able to number it because like I was invested. I was invested the whole way through, but I think the parts where I was just absolutely hooked was the first time he ditches Fukishi to go back to his mom after running away from her for like 2 days. My brain was, I was like internally screaming. I was like, you had it. You had her. You had what you needed. You were going to run away with her. You got away from your mother and you're going back. And it's like, I'm screaming at him. Like, I want him to change his mind. And he goes back to her and she terrorizes him for what he did. And she strangles him and he yells at her, why did you do it? She's like, how dare you say that to me? And like, I'm just like, why would you put yourself back in the situation? And then you have to think about the psychology. He's afraid to lose his mom more than anything else. And she is manipulative to the point where she will get what she wants because she knows what he wants, and
I agree. And
she'll
then
make
like
him
the whole thing
sacrifice.
of like yeah, and like her like kind of like making him like beg to come inside the house. Do you remember that?
Yeah,
Like
right
like a
after that
dog.
scene.
Man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she makes him promise to never talk to her again. And then he
Yeah.
tells her, I'm never going to talk to you again, and I hate you. Which is like, that also was like, okay, I understand that you're not allowed to talk to her, but why would you say you hate her? And I just,
Yeah, this is rubbing salt to the wound, yeah.
and it just like, it's things like that where like the author is really able to take my expectations and just punch me in the face with them. And it wasn't in a bad way, like how a lot of recent movies are subverting expectations, but in a way that's just disappointing. Like in this way, it's a lot more interesting because it does something really harsh, and it does this over and over and over, and like, I don't know, I live for that feeling when reading these.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's like the main draw was the whole psychology. I mean, and I guess maybe it's still kind of there. I mean, I haven't read again past the trial, but I would hope that it's just as interesting, or maybe not just as interesting, but there's some like level of thought behind Seiichi's mindset. I'm exploring it. If you're saying like he's an adult now, I'd really like to see maybe a little more like of like what he did or what his mother had done to him that we've never seen. Like, I don't know,
Like,
you know,
suppressed memories further.
Yeah, suppressed memories. Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm looking for. Yeah.
I am thinking now that he's an adult, which was probably hopefully planned all the way from the beginning. I want to see how all those things manifest themselves in him while he's no longer a child, because he might be just like Seiko, and he might have a moment that pushes him over the edge once again, and it'll just be that repeating cycle, that generational trauma we were talking about. Right now, I just want characters to return into the story, whether it's Seiko or Fukishi or both, because this narrative needs to come full circle eventually.
No, I agree. I feel like, personally for me, I feel like Oshimi is maybe dragging out the story. I feel like the story should have ended on that, you know, the mountain, you know?
Yeah.
Oh, actually, I have just one more question.
One more. All right, let's go.
We can wrap it up. Is there anything you don't like about Tomodachi? If so, explain.
I guess it's just the scene where Shigeru gets pushed the second time. I think that a huge thing that made me like feel bad for Shigeru was that after all that happened to him, he was still alive.
Yeah, I agree.
Because it's a fate worse than death. You're never gonna live like the normal life that you had up until that point, and you're in miserable pain. And it's like the woman that did this to you is walking around acting like it wasn't, like that it didn't happen, and you don't even know if he
wasn't a big deal. Yeah.
and you don't even remember you don't even know if he remembers at first. And it's just that's tragedy, and tragedy is what gets the most of my attention. But like, to have him get pushed off again and die just feels kind of cheap.
Oh, I agree, yeah.
I think that having him lived a full life and have him kind of acquire that humility and wisdom, he could have been a character that would have been around when Seiichi was an adult. And Seiichi could have probably had a very deep apology scene, just him and like Shigeru, but he'll never get to apologize because he murdered him.
No, I agree, yeah. It is pretty disappointing, man.
And like, he could have, like, imagine if they had this dialogue where he's like, deep down I wanted all that to happen and I can't say sorry enough. If we ever get that conversation, it's just gonna happen in his imagination.
Probably, yeah.
But like, I don't know.
He reconciles himself, yeah.
I don't think that Shigeru should have died. I think he should have had to continue living in his condition that wasn't in his control. Not that being in that condition's ever in your control, but like, having the people that did it to you just almost got away with it.
Yeah, I agree, yeah. Especially if you're saying like there's like the time skip, then it's like, yeah, like Oseko was able to like live and suffer no consequences. For me, that sounds pretty bad. But I mean, I'll see how it plays out.
Yeah, that's right. She doesn't go to jail.
She doesn't know. Remember,
right?
Like, she was at the trial, yeah.
Because she turned it on him and then was like, yeah, I actually only admitted to it because they were gonna hurt me, and then they concluded there wasn't enough evidence, and then they let her go. Jesus Christ.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, for me personally, that That's a little upsetting to hear. Yeah, I guess we'll see. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, let's turn the question on you. Other than what we talked about, is there anything else you dislike?
Personally, like a lot. Like before, I would say that the story was more like realistic and artsy, but now it's just straight up artsy. Because like for example, when in the trial, in the midst of the trial, Seichi like body slamming his mom, which really was pretty cool. When I saw that, I was like, yeah. But afterwards, when he's like on top of her, and like knowing that like one, the guy hasn't slept in days, and two, hasn't been eating, and is also surrounded by a bunch of people, and no one's doing anything, like until like the very end. It's like for me, I was like that kind of took me out of it, you know.
You would be surprised by the amount of strength a person can have even in a moment like that. But
well, I would have to agree, because there was like this this true story movie.
Is it
about this guy
127 hours?
What's up?
Is it the here, explain it.
Okay, it's like this guy, like I think he goes like rock climbing or whatever, like in the Grand Canyon.
127 hours, I knew it.
Yeah, come on, smart guy.
No, I said it before you even said rock climbing. I'm like, oh, true story about this guy. It's 127 hours.
Oh, okay,
yes.
Okay. Did you really say it?
I did.
Oh,
yes, and that movie
guy.
is it's not a bad movie. It's just hard to watch.
It's definitely hard to watch because
Okay, but like
by the end,
stuff like that,
like
and Life of Pi. That guy was stranded in the ocean with a lion. It's yes, the human body can do amazing things when on the brink of death. Not that Seiichi was dying, but it doesn't matter how physically weak you are moments before that.
Because the lead up to like the mountain was pretty peak, you know? Like
yeah,
it felt like,
I will say I like when it was more of an isolated incident, and I don't really like when law enforcement's involved. Like there are way too many, like the courthouse stuff, and like when Seiichi is getting interrogated and it's like he has to speak with like a therapist and a lawyer and police officers and all that stuff. I'm like, it really takes away from those personal moments with the other characters. There's one thing I wanted to add. I really like how this whole like family dynamic thing kind of is a critique on like Japanese industrialism, because most people tend to need a 2-parent household. And in Japan, people tend to work themselves literally to death. I feel like Seiichi would be more well-rounded and better taken care of had his father not have to be working all the time. But like, that's just standard in Japan. And that's standard in a lot of countries. But it's like, you work and you work and you work and you have no life outside of that.
The Japanese, they just work and work. They're hard workers.
And Junji Ito has some fair or really nice criticisms in his own works about that kind of stuff, which is something we should talk about in a video about Junji Ito someday.
Yeah, for sure.
But like, oh man, I'm invigorated by this stuff.
No, I agree. Yeah, shit. Like, I'm glad that like Chiyodachi has kind of spurred on your interest in manga, because even though I would say the story isn't as like good as it was before, I would say that Chiyodachi is like right up there, you know?
Yeah.
Like,
it's still
I would still say
it's above average, but it could be different. But
could be different.
I am in it for the ride, and I hope it surprises me and does like something great. But yeah, you should catch up, please.
Oh yeah. No, I will. It's just I mean, I can show you stuff later, but it's like it's just taking up a lot of my time, man.
Yeah. Well, anyways, that was our discussion on Chino Wadachi. If you've read the manga, comment what you thought. If you want to go into my Discord server, there's a link in the description. Anyways, subscribe to Fleur. I'll also have him linked in the description. And thanks for watching.